capital markets are
Yeah.
so efficient. I can
Hmm.
buy and sell any security anywhere within the world in like 2 minutes. Okay. Capital markets are insane. The liquidity, because of all the market makers and everybody involved, is unbelievable. The access to every retailer is unbelievable. All of the institutions like bidding against each other is unbelievable. This idea that 20 people decide like what stocks to buy and sell for your entire fund, like it doesn't make any sense. People in chat are saying things like, but Destiny, don't you know that you don't actually vote on what the fund manages? You do vote, mother. You vote when you buy the fund. Okay.
Hmm.
When you
True.
click in your little Fidelity account, when you click in your Vanguard account and you look at that YOY thing, the year over year, all the index fund performance and everything, that's what you're buying. You're buying the performance of the fund. That's what you buy on. You
Hmm.
like, so when you say like, well, you don't vote, yeah, you do vote, because if I look at my DOO and I see that I'm getting like a 3% return year over year, you know what I'm going to do? I'm selling that ETF. I'm not going to hold on to that shit. I'm going to go buy something that outperforms it. Of course, you vote. You vote with your wallet, literally, in the most highly liquid way possible. So anybody in chat that's like, well, you don't vote on how to allocate the funds. Yeah, no shit. You're not a fucking asset manager, you dumb fuck. Why? Who the fuck would want to buy into a fund where morons like you are voting on what things to buy? If you want to vote on things to buy, then you just go and either open your own hedge fund or just buy stocks in it. You can do it on your own. You can buy your own individual stocks. When you're buying a fund, you're buying and these funds aren't even actively managed. The majority of assets held by institutions like Vanguard and
They're
BlackRock,
index
they're not
funds,
even,
yeah.
they're not even actively managed funds. Okay. These things don't have people like making crazy buy sell day. It's so stupid. Sorry. Okay.
Well, no, but isn't what you're arguing for is, at least it seems like you're arguing for keeping kind of the shareholder capitalism that we have, and it seems like you'd be against the stakeholder model that James is also
No,
arguing
here's
for.
why the stakeholder model is important. Okay. And I need to be better at giving big speeches. Okay. Because I hate it. I just I'm autistic. Okay. I just want to go point by point and argue. But here's the reality, okay? There are some companies in the United States that are incredibly successful and amazingly innovative in the tech world. But I don't feel like, as an American, I don't feel like the average person gets anything from that. Do we really feel like we share in Zuckerberg's success or Elon Musk's success? It doesn't feel that way. When we landed on the moon in '69, that felt like an American win, okay? When tech companies, double their valuation, fucking every 5 years or whatever, that feels like a win for Bezos and Zuckerberg. It doesn't feel like we're sharing in that win there. So there's got to be some way to tie us into the success of those companies, whether it's with like a sovereign wealth fund or whatever, like Norway does. I hate wealth taxes, but something maybe there has to be some way to get us, because like shareholders are people that are usually have a lot of money, right? Very capital intensive. They make a lot of money, they have a lot of money, and that money makes a lot of money. So they have more money so they can make more money. And I just don't feel like the average Americans are really bought into the success of the average shareholder of, a multi-billion-dollar company. So the stakeholder concept is good. And we already do stakeholder capitalism, whether you guys know it or not. That's the whole purpose of the government. The whole purpose of the government is to intervene on behalf of the country in opposition to the shareholders in order to ensure that companies are acting in ways that are more beneficial to all of society, rather than just letting the invisible hand hope that the hand doesn't decide to dump a whole bunch of like sewage into the fucking river or something, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's what I said.
Hold on. Okay.
10
Wait, I'm
hours.
sorry. This Simon guy in your chat, he's true and fucking me. Destiny thinks people vote at shareholder meetings to perform. Okay. No, they don't have to vote, you fucking moron. The funds are managed by people that are trying to return good performance to people that buy their funds. If your fund has a shitty return, nobody's going to buy your fund, dude. Why doesn't Destiny know that most of the shareholders he's talking about have no input in the company? No, you have input, you dumb fuck. You have input when you buy the fund. That's the whole point of buying the fund. You buy a fund. Wait, LOL, what it take? 95% lose all their money on crypto, the top performing financial asset of all time. Why couldn't you just told me that at the beginning, that you have 25 IQ? I'm sorry. I should have read that message.
No, that's good. I'm glad. I wish that we could just have you argue with the chat.
Bitcoin did 1,200% per annum on the 5-year chart. Oh yeah,
why
bro.
are you
Did your
letting
portfolio
Destiny
do 1,200%?
argue with our chat? Come on, these are our friends.
It makes me feel better
because
I'm the one arguing with the chat.
This Simon guy is a dumb. Imagine citing the overall performance of Bitcoin as an entire class rather than what the individual like fucking makes on it. Like, okay, bro, let me talk to you about who would cite the GDP of the United States as saying like every American is doing well. If you think most people are making money on crypto, you're actually fucking delusional. And I know you are, because I know you're not making money on crypto. Because if you were making money on crypto, you wouldn't be in a fucking YouTube chat at fucking 2:40 a.m. telling everybody about how good crypto is. Okay.
Hey,
like finding your next shit.
We've had crypto billionaires come in here and give us lots of money.
We did,
but not at 2:40 a.m. That's true.
Okay. Sorry. Anything else?
No. Okay. No. What I said 10 hours ago was exactly sort of what you just said at the end, which is that is what the role of the government is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the conflict mechanism, sort of saying, okay, well, the shareholders and the private government and private entities, private corporations, they're kind of driven by their profit, and they're doing what they're doing, and they're motivated according to their shareholders, and the government's supposed to represent kind of the will of the people via regulation, and there's supposed to be this conflict between the two of them. And I'm fine with that. But I don't see how that model can be embedded into a private corporation itself via the stakeholder model. And I think that's what I think that's what's kind of like holding up this.
If you want to get away from like the bullshit, and you want to do like an actual, oh my God, am I going to be able to find this?
Destiny, how did this panel come together? Like, did they give you any lead on what you were going to be talking about or anything like that?
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems kind of
Did
like
they say that you guys were going to
haphazard.
argue about ESGs for an hour, or was it just like the great?
I didn't know it was going to be about
stuff?
ESGs, but
Right.
otherwise I would have done a little bit more reading, and I could have,
Yeah.
because there was even more random stupid shit that this guy said.
So
Oh my
James
God.
kind of
Wait, who am I
dragged it
thinking
in
of? There's
that
a
direction.
Wall Street Journal writer. Is his name Mark Levine? Who am I thinking of?
I don't know. Who are you thinking of?
What? Oh my God, I don't know. Fuck, I don't remember the guy's name. He has a very, very, very he's a very, very interesting writer. He does a lot of writing for it's either I think it's the Wall Street Journal. But basically this concept of like okay, you asked me a question of like how the shareholders, the stakeholders.
No, I said I'm fine with the government being the representative of the people. I don't see how it's going to work into the company itself. How to have the
I think
stakeholder.
like the concept would be that like if you could peg, like if we could theoretically have a score like on 1 to 100 that shows like how like good quote unquote a company is in the long term for all of society. Oh, it's Matt Levine. Like that maybe like funds would be opting towards these companies because they can actually deliver more reliable, stable, long-term results would be the idea.
Well, yeah, but reliable, like long-term investment strategies or like long-term health of the company isn't necessarily related to like how moral a company is, right?
It has nothing to do with morality. It just has to do with long-term like stability, which can usually tie into morality. But
I mean, I guess that's true-ish. I don't know. I mean, part of it, I don't know how much you've looked into the ESG scores after this conversation, because when I looked into
them,
it,
nobody like agrees on anything. It's like super fucking chaotic. Nobody has any fucking idea.
It seems like a big scam. It seems like that's why people are calling for the SEC to regulate the scores, because there is no agreement, there's no standardization, there's no transparency. It does seem like a lot of bullshit. So I don't think that is the answer. But the I guess having a score like this that's supposed to, talk about long-term health. I don't know. I'd be more, I guess, on board with them looking at this in favor of like long-term health, as opposed to trying to make it a moral question. And I think that's what's getting James
but like there's
so triggered, is that it ties into all like the woke diversity stuff.
It's not about woke diversity. That's some boring shit. It's about like long-term health of like financial companies. Yeah, some of the metrics it's like, how okay, let me see if I can,
how
like here's like an interesting thing that is possible now, because of how big some of these funds have gotten. We're talking BlackRock. I think they manage over $60 trillion of funds. I think like 10 trillion actively, 50 passively, something. But like what here's like a possible thing that can happen with like a quote unquote ESG score that couldn't happen before. Okay. Let's say that you have a company, like let's say you've got a bunch of airlines. Okay. Let's say that airlines, have you ever heard of like the tragedy of the commons, or like any of these ideas that like if one party, if everybody acts in a certain way, it'll fuck everything up?
You're really going to ask us that, Destiny? Really?
Okay.
Do we know about the tragedy of the commons?
Okay.
For fuck's sake.
Okay. Damn, I'm just checking. Okay. But okay.
We're not the guy in the chat. Okay.
Sure. Let's say that you have a company like an airline. Okay. If this airline were to like either heavily restrict passengers, like do every other seat, or were to enact like really strict like masking shit or whatever, let's say theoretically that this creates a better society, but it creates an undue financial burden on the airline. Now, in our current system, nobody is going to invest in that airline because your profits are going to be shit. Because the company is taking these huge losses for what? Social responsibility? Like, who cares? But if we had a theoretical world where people could grade companies like this, a company like BlackRock, maybe they're managing assets on all of these other companies across the United States, to where if the airlines would take a hit on their profits and be a little bit less efficient and space people out. There'd be less people getting sick that would fuck up other companies in their portfolio. So if this was the case, let's say that we could rate like Delta, American Airlines, and United, and we give them like, okay, these guys get like a responsibility score of like 94. Even though the profit return isn't ideal, even though we probably wouldn't invest in a company like this, we're going to continue to invest in a company like this, because if we invest in a company with a score that high, the fact that they're taking a hit on their profits to make sure that they're operating in a responsible way actually like buoys the rest of your portfolio. It actually helps the other companies in your portfolio perform well. And that's like the concept when you have these like mega asset managers, of how historically you're never going to have an individual company take a hit to help society, because you've got a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders. But now when you've got massive asset managers that have their interests are broader than that, right? They've got interests in all these companies across society. Maybe we can have like a couple companies take hits in order to make sure that the rest of the economy does well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense theoretically, but I mean, I'm assuming you're saying that's not the way it's working now, because I don't
Right
think
now,
that is how they're working. How ESG
have you ever heard the
scores are
saying?
working
It's
now.
like, if you have like 6 standards that are a nightmare, if you create one cable, we can make everything better. And then now you have 7 standards. It's like that, right? Like, yeah, everybody wants to do something like this, but it's really hard to implement it because you have to get people to agree on shit, and probably not, you know.
Yeah, but it seems like the current system, and the thing that's triggering James and a lot of other people about this, is that when you have, first of all, when you combine, a lot of different sectors like environment, social, and governments, and all this stuff together to try to
Mhm.
create one magical average with a bunch of different competing interests, you're going to have problems. And it seems like you can have situations where, Shell oil can be pumping 800 megatons of, emissions into the atmosphere, and yet they can have a positive ESG score because they say that, we have they do all this diversity, equity training stuff. And it seems like a lot of these corporations under the current ESG rating system, they can do a lot of performative wokeness stuff to counteract real environmental harms or real actual harms they're, inflicting upon society.
Yeah,
To
and,
kind
if
of
that
cover
if
that
that
all.
was the case, then I think that that's like something worth talking about. But right now, I don't think the implementation of that is anything like that. Like, nobody can really agree on like what an ESG score should be. Nobody can agree on like what can be responsible. Like, I don't think we're at that level, and I don't think that fund like portfolio managers are going to be too concerned about like the woke shit. I think that you bring up like there is an interesting conversation to be had about this stuff. James is not the guy that's capable of having that conversation because he doesn't understand financial markets.
That's true.
If you don't have any concept of how capital markets work, then you have no business talking about this. If you're going to pretend that like diversity training is why Disney's fucking stock dropped, like you're off in another world. That's a fun conversation to go and have like with some culture war loser. But I think there is an interesting conversation of like, how can people assign these scores? What should the score even measure? How can we come together in agreement? Is it even possible? It might not be, which I think is a fair point for sure.